Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. This is To OBN show. I am your host, Addis Asafa. This is OBN Horn of Africa. Today I joined Mr. Khalid Bomba, Chief Executive Officer of ATA, Ethiopian Agricultural Transformation Agency. Okay, Doctor, it's a pleasure to have you.
Nice to be with you.
All right, could you tell me a bit about ATA, Agricultural Transformation Agency?
Sure. The ATA, or the Agriculture Transformation Agency, is a government institution that is an independent federal entity with branches in regional, in different regions of Ethiopia. It's modeled after the nodal agency concept, which was very successful in Asia, which helped countries like Korea, Taiwan, Malaysia develop during the second half of the 20th century. And the whole purpose of the organization is to catalyze agricultural transformation in Ethiopia by undertaking a series of different types of activities that support institutions, government institutions and public sector, as well as NGOs and private sector as well.
Do you really think that ATA has been doing activities in transforming agriculture so far?
I do. And there are 4 different mandates that the ATA has. So let me tell you about all 4 of them and how I think all 4 of them contribute to transforming the agricultural sector. So one part of our work is what we call undertaking studies. And this is in our regulation that founded the ATA. And we undertake studies that are more than just research studies that sit on the shelf, but rather these are practical studies about policy changes that might need to be made or projects that we design. And we have taken, over the last 10 years, over 250 different studies. And over 70% of these studies have been implemented in some way. Over 70% of these 250 studies. So that's one big thing that we've done. Another really impactful part of our work written on regulation is ATA is supposed to implement projects, very specific projects. And we have implemented 48 different projects over the past 10 years. And many of our projects have gone to scale. And by that I mean that I think it's 12 projects that have reached over 1 million farmers. 12 of our 48 projects, so about 25%. And some of these projects, like the 8028 Farmer Hotline, is a toll-free number that farmers can call. 8028. If you dial 8028 today, right now, you will get agronomic advice in 5 or 6 different languages. In Oromifa, in Amharic, in Tigrinya, in Sidaminya, in Walaitina. You'll get recommendations on what to do. And that project has over 5 million farmers that's registered. Another big project of ours is the digital soil mapping, Ethiosis, that we did, which has changed fundamentally the fertilizer recommendations all across the country. So this second area of ATA's work, of projects, is probably the most impactful part of our work. And then our other 2 mandate areas, one is implementation support, and the other is linkages and coordinations. And on implementation support, we have tried to build the capacity of the Ministry of Agriculture, the regional bureaus of agriculture, and other partners using different mechanisms. And then linkages and coordination, we try to create linkages between different activities, not just of the ATA, but of different partners, including the private sector. So for example, a really important linkage we try to create is between farmers and markets. That's a critical linkage in agriculture. And we've actually done, I think, a good job. Not a great job, but a good job. A solid job that has begun to transform agriculture in Ethiopia.
I appreciate it. How do you work with the regional agriculture bureaus?
So the primary work we're doing at the moment at the regional level is in the 4 biggest regions of the country that produce over 90% of the agriculture produce in the country. That's in Oromia, Amhara, SNNP, and in Tigray. And in those 4 regions, we actually have branch offices where ATA staff are working directly with the Regional Bureau of Agriculture. And our work is actually coordinated directly with the regional government's work. So many times our projects are pilots that the regional government scales up. So for example, one of our most impactful projects is called the Farmer Production Cluster. This is the cluster project that everybody, including the Prime Minister, now is talking about. That is something that ATA did as a pilot 3 years ago with about 90,000 farmers. This year, 1.8 million farmers are working directly on this project in geographies where ATA is working. However, and most importantly, we support the regional government to expand this beyond where ATA works. So there's an additional 4 million farmers outside of the ones that are working directly with the ATA and the regional government, where the regional government is working by itself to bring this farmer production cluster idea to those farmers. So our whole role is to identify innovations, to test those innovations with the regional government, and then support the regional government in scaling these up across the entire region.
Okay, what is your relation with the Ministry of Agriculture?
So we are an independent federal organization.
What does it mean by independent?
Independent means that we have our own structure within the organization, our own salary structure, our own ways of working. So it's an independent entity. I'm the CEO of this organization, and I report, of course, to the government, but like other agencies, it's independent. But our relationship with the ministry is like a big brother and a small brother. Okay. Ministry of Agriculture is ultimately responsible for the whole agriculture sector. We are a catalyst. We try to bring innovation. We try to bring new ideas under the ministry's overall guidance and of course, oversight. But we are also intended to be entrepreneurial, nimble, to bring new ideas. If we are just an extension of the Ministry of Agriculture and a directorate of the Ministry of Agriculture, then you don't need a separate ATA. So it's supposed to be an organization that thinks and works differently to bring innovation, but very closely with the ministry as well as with the regional bureaus of agriculture.
Okay, I have heard that ATA is working in making the agrarians, the farmers, the producers, beneficiary in different aspects. We can mention the market linkage and the value chain structure. Can you tell me about it?
Sure. So we don't really think of farmers as beneficiaries.
Before or now?
Ever. From the beginning of the ATA, we thought of them as business people and partners. Because ultimately, what every farmer should be thinking about is, how do I make the most money possible from the resources that I have? Not, I'm a beneficiary of this NGO or a beneficiary of that. So whatever recommendations we bring to them, we have to believe that it's in their best interest to adopt it because it will make their lives better. So when we work with farmers, we try to identify location and agroecologically specific recommendations and technologies that will improve both their production and productivity as well as their income generation potential. So, for example, our Ethiosis soil mapping project is very targeted towards farmers in every single warada, almost down to the Kabale level, to identify the type of fertilizer. Is it NPS boron or NPS magnesium, or does it need sulfur? Or how much, when is the timing of urea application in different doses at different times of the during the planting season that they have to apply. So we have to be very contextualized to provide recommendations to farmers. And then farmers have to be business people and think about, does this make sense for me?
Yes.
Is this in my best interest? And make informed decisions. So we see our job as providing farmers with information to make the best decisions possible for themselves and their families.
You're working on soil mapping, you say that. Can you tell me about it again?
Sure. The soil mapping project is actually a very interesting one because when we first wanted to do the project, this is in 2013, many of our donors said, no country in Africa has ever done this. You're wasting your time. It's not possible to do it. And the Prime Minister said to me, if you accept this recommendation from donors, then you're not the right person for the job. And of course, I took it as a challenge. Because while African countries have not done this, many European countries have done it. And I thought to myself, there's no reason why we as Ethiopians can't do the same thing. So we looked at different technologies and approaches of how to do the soil mapping. And eventually, it took us almost a year. And the late Professor Takaling is actually the person who led this project. He came up with a partnership with a number of different institutions, and including the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ethiopian Institute for Agricultural Research, that had a dual approach. One was to use confluence points based on the horizontal and vertical longitude and latitude to take soil samples at specific points around the country and then use calibration, algorithms, and machine learning to identify exactly what nutrients were missing. So one was longitude and latitude-based soil collection, but the other was to go to every single warada in the entire country and collect soil samples from different parts of the warada. And as a result, we have collected over 150,000 samples of soil from every warada in the country, and it's sitting in a warehouse in Kaliti. And that soil was then analyzed using two different approaches. One was a traditional wet chemistry, where you actually use solutions to identify what nutrients are missing. But then we also identified an innovative new technology that actually uses light. It's a machine called a spectrophotometer that passes light through the soil to understand exactly what nutrients are missing, and you can do this much faster. When you have 150,000 soil samples, doing wet chemistry can be very expensive and also take a lot of time. But using this machine, the spectrophotometer, and passing light through it, you can analyze soil much, much quicker, and it's much more accurate. So by doing this spectrophotometer-based analysis, we were then able to identify what nutrients were missing in the soil in every warada, and then provide that information to EIAR, the research institute, who then looks at that information and does ground testing based on different commodities to provide fertilizer recommendation. And the reason why I give you that whole story is because we have learned, and this is something that every organization in Ethiopia should understand, you can't do agricultural transformation by yourself. It doesn't matter what organization. Even the Ministry of Agriculture and EIAR can't do transformation by themselves. We can all play our part. We can all do one part, but then somebody else, like a relay race where you hand a baton to somebody and that person runs the next kilometer and then the next person runs. We hand the baton to EIAR. EIAR then comes up with the recommendation, and then the extension system provides that recommendation to the farmers. So it's really a partnership with all of these different institutions to provide farmers with the best fertilizer recommendation.
Okay, Ethiopians used to plow by oxen for millennia, and still doing that. We haven't seen mechanized farming. And what does ATA is doing in that sense?
So part of the reason that we haven't seen mechanized farming is because of the structure of our agricultural sector. And by that I mean most farms across the country are very small farms. 1 hectare, half a hectare, 2 hectares. And when a farmer has 1 hectare of land, it is not economical for that farmer to buy a tractor to work 1 hectare of land. It just does not make financial sense. So the structure of our agricultural sector and the economics around it are part of the reason why it has not been mechanized. What we've tried to do at ATA is change the economics around our farming system, and as a result, increase mechanization. So we've done two things. The first is the cluster project I talked about before, where we bring farmers together in clusters. All of a sudden, you have farmers that are producing the same commodity, planted on the same day, in the same variety, all next to one another.
Yes.
So to use mechanization on that kind of cluster is much easier and much more economical. The second thing that we have done is we have come up with a project that's called the Farmer Mechanization Service Center, which is about creating these service centers that provide mechanization for a fee. That way, a farmer does not have to own the machine. He can hire the service center to come and do the plowing for him, or the harvesting for him, or her, and pay a fee rather than pay for the whole machine. That way, it also creates jobs for youth. These youth can now work for these service centers as machine operators, or as maintenance people, rather than standing behind an ox and a plow. Now they actually drive a tractor and they get paid for the harvesting that they do, rather than worrying about the production and the agronomy and when am I planting and is it raining or not raining. All they need to do is do the harvesting and get paid a service for it. So it really is about the economics of our farming system that has held back the mechanization, and it's the economics and the business models around it that we are trying to change.
Okay, Ethiopia has, a heat in desert locust swarm, right? Mm-hmm. What is your contribution in halting the spread and the swarm?
In the immediate term, what we are doing is supporting the Ministry of Agriculture, because they are taking the lead by mobilizing resources from our donors and providing financial resources, vehicles for transporting experts. We're actually also in the process right now, because we have been requested by the Ministry of Agriculture, of buying seeds for farmers to provide to farmers to replant some of the lost crops across the country. So at the moment, our biggest focus is in supporting the ministry in whatever support they need. However, we also think about things from a system point of view. How do we make sure that this does not happen again, rather than putting fires out today and not thinking about tomorrow? So when we think about tomorrow, it's things like an early warning system that we have to put in place to make sure that when we see locusts coming in advance in Yemen, or in Pakistan, we can say with FAO does this kind of thing. When is it going to reach us? How do we prepare ourselves for this? So while FAO does this for the world, we as Ethiopia need to have this kind of capacity locally to be able to do it, not only for desert locusts, but for any other disease, be it wheat rust or maize lethal necrosis. Every year it's a different disease that it's affecting a different part of the country. So an early warning system is probably the best defense that we can have against future diseases like this.
Okay, you have started a market linkage sample and value chain in Asala Milk Factory with that of Walia beer, isn't it?
That's right.
But you failed to expand this train to other places. Can you tell me the hindrance?
Well, I would say that the market linkages that we have helped to create in the beer industry have moved incredibly quickly to the point of actually eliminating the raw barley that we used to import from outside the country. So there is no more raw barley that's imported, because our farmers can actually produce international quality malting barley that can go into the malt factories. That has actually succeeded because of the efforts of the buyers themselves. The buyers themselves, Asela Malt Factory, the breweries, Heineken, Diageo, and others, were very clear about what their market demand was, and they were willing to pay a premium for high quality. So a big part of creating strong market linkages comes from the buyer side first. But then on the other side, farmers also saw the economics made sense. And all the rest of us in the supply chain supported that process by using what we call the Value Chain Alliance, which is a mechanism that brings all of these different stakeholders together. So while the the malt barley value chain is the most advanced in creating this kind of market linkage, I would actually argue that the other value chain alliances that we work on, which includes wheat, maize, teff, sesame, those are the others, as well as some in the fruits and vegetable that we have just begun, have also shown progress. Not as much as the malt barley, but some progress. And eventually, we will get there. It's just the sophistication of the buyers and the strength of the supply chain in those others is a bit more fragmented and more difficult to align to the type of quick progress that we've seen in malt barley.
You're working with Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, I guess.
Not as much. Not as much.
I have heard a report that Ethiopia will completely stop importing wheat from abroad in the next 3 or 5 years. Are you genuine to say this? You're a stakeholder too.
So I think that there is absolutely the potential for us to do that.
Completely stopping?
There is the potential for us to do that, yes. Okay. But we have to all work together. We have to work efficiently, and we have to have the right strategies and policies in place. But is the potential there? Absolutely, it is there.
Okay. ATS activities over the past 6 months. Can you put it in a kind of evaluation?
So there's actually an evaluation that's in the process of being done of ATA at multiple levels. So we do an internal evaluation every single quarter. Every 3 months we do an evaluation, and we have a red, green, yellow for every single project that the ATA runs. So we know what our status is on every project every quarter. But more importantly, we have an annual, and that quarterly report actually gets presented to the Ministry of Agriculture. So the ministry also knows exactly how we're doing in every project in every mandate area. And then every year as well, we try to provide an annual report that provides, that illustrates what we've been doing and what the successes and weaknesses. Now, we are in the process, we have asked FAO to do an evaluation, an impact assessment evaluation of ATA over the past 10 years. They are in the process of doing that, and in the beginning of August, we hope that they will release that report. So we will be able to communicate what the FAO's finding, an external international body's finding is, on the ATA's contributions to the Ethiopian agricultural sector by early December.
Thank you. Who are the stakeholders of ATA?
So I think I always say to my staff, we might be a government institution reporting to the Ministry of Agriculture, reporting to the Transformation Council that's chaired by the Prime Minister, but our biggest and most important stakeholders are the farmers of Ethiopia. That is who we work for. That is the number one stakeholder.
Okay, who injected the fund?
So funding is a different issue. The funding comes from different international partners, as well as the government of Ethiopia itself. So if you look back at our last 10 years, our biggest funders have been the government of Denmark and the government of Netherlands. Those are our two biggest funders. But there are also other funders like the World Bank, the Gates Foundation, Irish Aid, CEDA Canada, USAID, many others, the Moroccan government that have funded us. But the important thing to note is that we have actually a very unique relationship with our funding partners, because we don't just take money from partners and implement projects. That's not the way we work. We design programs that we think will be the most effective for our farmers, and then take those programs to our donors, potential donors, and say, here's something that we think will make an impact. Will you fund that project? And to date, over the past 10 years, we have not had one project that we have taken to a donor that has not been funded. Every project that we have taken to a donor has eventually been funded. Sometimes it's a pilot initially to test it, and then they will fund a bigger thing. But we've always designed projects, first and foremost, with impact at the farmer level as the primary objective, and then gone out and looked for funding, rather than donors coming to us and asking us, can you implement this project or can you implement that project?
Okay, Ethiopia had a flood disaster over the past rainy season. Have you had any, disaster in your intervention area?
So we work in over 300 waradas.
Okay.
As a result, there is some kind of disaster that affects all of our farmers, be it desert locust, be it flooding, be it drought. And Ethiopia is such a big country that you can have multiple things happening at the same time. And this is why having our branch offices is so important, and our partnership with the regional bureaus of agriculture is so important, because they have a better understanding of the problems that farmers face at the Warada and Kabale level more than we will ever understand. So we have to take guidance from them. They have to give us an indication of, here's the biggest problem we face, ATA, can you help us? And then we can mobilize our analytics team and other experts to look at the problem and help solve those problems.
Okay, when we talk about agriculture, we do have different segments. We can mention a beehiving or poultry, or the usual flow of land and other cereals, you see, irrigation. Which are your intervention areas?
This is an area of criticism that ATA has gotten, and I would say rightly so, because over the past 10 years, we have been focused primarily on crop commodities, especially those that are important for food security, and in the 4 biggest regions of the country. That's where we have been focused. However, our new strategy, starting in 2013, expands our work from primarily working on crops. It's not like we haven't worked on other livestock commodities. We've had a honey project. Also, our Ethiosis project, for example, works across the country and not just in the 4 regions. But our new strategy works not only or not primarily in crops, but also in livestock. So we'll begin working in dairy, in meat, in poultry, and also expands our geography focus from the 4 biggest regions of the country to others such as Somali region, Afar, Benishangul, Gambela, and Harari.
Okay, I'm about to wrap up my question. Can you, put your future direction, ATA's future direction?
Our future direction, I hope, will be very similar to our past direction, which is for the organization to serve as a catalyst for transformation by bringing innovations to the sector, by working very closely with our partners, both public and private sector, and ultimately by engaging our smallholder farmers to ensure that their lives are ultimately meaningfully impacted, by helping them work as business people and as critical components of the food supply chain rather than as beneficiaries.
What are the major challenges that you're having so far in pursuing in your, in your activities?
One is a lack of integration and coordination. And I think this is something that you see across many different sectors and something that we're trying to help. But you continue to see some lack of coordination. But the biggest challenges are actually externally oriented. And when I say externally, it's things out of our control. Climate change. How do you deal with that when you have a flood or when you have a drought? So these are external challenges that we really do have to figure out a way to create greater resilience around. But another main challenge that we have to tackle head on is how to make our agriculture sector more inclusive, ensuring that it is responsive to the needs of marginalized communities, the needs and aspirations of women farmers, and also of youth. How do we create jobs and get youth excited and think of agriculture as an exciting place where they can make a lot of money, but at the same time create and help the development of the country. So these are just some high-level challenges that we face.
Okay, do you have any recommendation? It can be for Ministry of Agriculture or for Regional Bureau of Agriculture?
The recommendation that I would have is really, let's please all work together. Let's all work together. There's plenty for all of us to do, but let's get things done. Let's move forward. Let's reduce the bureaucracy that sometimes exists in our in our engagements, and let's just get stuff done. We might not always be perfect. We might make some mistakes, but it's better to do 80% very quickly than wait and wait and wait and do 100% of something much smaller and less impactful.
Okay, good to have you. Thank you for your appreciation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Dear viewers, you have been watching Talk to OBN show. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.